Hello and welcome back to the farm on this beautiful autumn day. These are the days when you get jobs done. I've already sown loads of stuff in the polytunnel, and if you saw the last video, I put loads of bulbs and corms in for those spring cut flowers. And now it's time for some of the more infrastructure and manual work. It has to be said though, I'm not a massive fan of mucking out. I used to be the livestock manager for an open farm, and so we had lots of animals in smallish pens because we were trying to fit in as many farm animals and different varieties of animals as possible, but it meant so much mucking out. So one thing I did when I moved to this farm was I made sure there was going to be as little mucking out as possible. So I rotationally grazed the sheep. The pigs are all outside and just have their ark, and actually pigs are clean, so they tend to poop outside and not in their ark, hence no mucking out. I'm also gradually building the number of chicken tractors I've got, so you never have to muck out chicken poo, which is the worst poo. You just pull the chicken tractor along to a new patch, and you allow all that old poo to fertilise the ground. I have even managed to get all my goats out onto pasture without even a shelter, and they actually are being fine. Whether they will be fine when it comes to winter, they may need to come in. But at the moment, in the autumn, even when it rains, they kind of hunker down in the thistles and hide away. So it's working well. Again, no muck out. And so the only true muck out I have at the moment is kind of the lambing barn, which I only use in one season per year. And so I actually haven't mucked it out since we lambed back in April. And this is it. You can see I've started to muck this out, and then all of this needs to be mucked out up here. And even with this, because they were only in here for a couple of months, there's not a huge amount of muck to take out, and most of it is quite lightweight. If you have ever mucked out a deep litter scenario, you know of the pain of taking off that light fluffy top layer and then getting down to the solid straw and hay that's clumped together and full of wee and moisture, and the smell. It's quite something. Whereas this stuff is really light. I'll show you. It comes up relatively easily. There's a little bit of matting, and over here, this is even better. This has really rotted down. So this is basically ready just to go straight onto flower beds. I do find there's something quite zen and nice about doing a muck out, and that I think is because as I said before, I've made every possible way on this farm to do as little of it as possible. So kind of it's just a short task rather than a constant and ongoing chore. But doing the muck out and you reusing all of that straw and muck somewhere else on the farm, making it nice and clean, and then making pens up of fluffy new straw for the new animals coming in is kind of a nice job done. And so for the muck that's got a lot of straw in it still, I'm putting that right onto the pumpkin patch area that I will be using next year. And over the winter, the frost and any snow we get will help just compact that down, break it down a bit and start to get it into the ground. And it'll be great for the pumpkins because they like a lot of muck. And then for this patch that's more dusty and broken down, I'm using it to top up the bulb beds from last year. So I've got some sunflowers growing in these beds that didn't do particularly well this year because of the drought, but there's loads of bulbs in here for spring. So I'm just giving them an additional mulch layer. This entranceway to the farm is gradually becoming better, and we're using a lot of wood chip to kind of make the yard as flat as possible. I had wanted to start getting the fence posts for these in because we've got a fence here and a fence there, and I wanted a double gate system here. But I came along yesterday to start digging the hole, and even though we've got a lot of rain, it is a few inches down, it's solid still. So we're going to have to wait till there is more rain. I've also got all of that to move still, but I know I mentioned a couple of videos ago that I pulled this shoulder, and actually it's not a pulled shoulder, it's a trapped nerve. So I'm trying to stay away from lifting heavy stuff at the moment. So for now, that will just have to wait. A bit of therapeutic mucking out every day though can continue. I'm not trying to do the whole barn at once, just doing a little bit every day and chipping away. As always, if you are enjoying the video, please consider hitting that thumbs up button and subscribing. If you'd like to support the farm in any way, then you can always buy a virtual coffee. And remember, the 2023 Brimwood Farm calendar is now available for order. And the links for the calendar and the coffee are in the description below. Now, of course, muck actually is really important on the farm because you need it to fertilise. But luckily, with my rotational grazing and the future rewilding plans, it means that actually the animals will fertilise on the hoof, as it were. I also have no shortage of muck because this entire mound is cow muck. And that's because before I moved back to the farm, my neighbour down the road used to keep a pedigree cattle herd in that barn over winter. So every spring he would muck out and make me a huge great pile of steaming poo. And so this has been sat here now for 3 years. It's really nice and rotted down. So I've been using this on the pumpkin patch and the garden, but it will keep me going for many a year. And now I'm lambing in the barn. Each year I can pull out that lambing manure as well, and I can use that on the garden. So I don't need any more manure. Now we're down by the badger set because I need to refresh the chip in the trail camera. So there's an extensive set here, and this time last year both badgers and foxes were using it as a den. And then in the spring the foxes took over and they reared 5 beautiful cubs, but they seem to have ousted the badgers. However, the badgers are back and I want to capture them on film to see if they've gone off and had a family and then come back to this set. Now last year and in January, February, there were 2 badgers and they were actually in this set over here, so I had my camera facing this way. But it now looks like they've actually taken over the den from the foxes because all of the fresh movement and all the fresh sand coming out and the bedding and the badger prints are here, and this is where the fox den was. And I'm really keen to see how many there are. As I say, there were 2 last year. If there are more, it's likely they went off to another set, had cubs, and then have returned here to overwinter. So fingers crossed for some juveniles. And I, of course, will keep you updated with any footage I've got. If you're a Patreon, obviously you'll see it first because it'll be on the Patreon page, but keep watching the videos in the future, and at the end I'll do my little wildlife trail camera videos, and you'll see whether the badgers return. And if you're looking for other ways to try and reduce the effort on your farm like I was, then check out the video here where I go through how I made and put together my chicken tractor.